The ruins were quiet, but not in a peaceful way. The air smelled of burned metal, scorched soil, and old blood. Sergeant Elias Varr moved carefully across the rubble, his boots crunching over shards of shattered plating. Every step echoed too loudly in his ears. He kept his rifle ready, though he doubted it would do much against what had passed through here. The battlefield had been silent for hours, but silence was not safety. Elias was an engineer first, a soldier second. His duty had been to patch weapons, fix armor, and keep the human lines moving forward. Yet battles never asked for permission. The front had collapsed quickly, and in the chaos he had been separated from his squad. Now he wandered alone, scanning for signals, hoping for survivors, or at least a path back to his unit. He froze when he heard a sound. Not mechanical, not the hum of a drone, something heavier. Breathing, slow, strained, uneven. He ducked behind a twisted slab of metal and listened. The sound came again, followed by a faint hiss of sparks. Against his better judgment, Elias crept forward. There she was. At first he thought it was another wreck, just a pile of broken armor thrown against the wall of a collapsed bunker. But then it moved. A tall figure slumped against the rubble, her chest rising and falling in ragged rhythm. Her armor was silver and dark blue, scorched in places, torn open in others. Lines of light flickered weakly across it like veins in a dying machine. She was alien, Aelith, one of humanity's most dangerous foes. Elias had only seen their warriors from a distance. Up close, they were almost too large, too graceful, too sharp-edged to look real. Her eyes opened when she sensed him. They glowed faintly, gold in the shadows. She tried to push herself up, but her strength failed. The armor sparked violently at the chest and she groaned, a deep sound that rattled like stone grinding on stone. Elias lifted his rifle, but his hands shook. She was wounded, barely holding together. One shot could end her. One shot would be the safe choice. Yet he didn't fire. Instead, he whispered almost to himself, "Damn, you're falling apart." Her gaze locked on him. There was no fear in it, only defiance, even as her body trembled. She spoke in accented words, her voice hoarse. "Human, you should leave. My enemies will come." Elias should have listened. He should have turned and walked away. But his eyes went to her chest plate, to the way the circuits sparked and fizzed, the way the plates groaned as if about to collapse inward. He recognized the signs, not of life, but of failing tech. And if there was one thing he knew, it was machines begging to be fixed. He lowered the rifle slowly. "Armor first," he muttered. Questions later. The alien warrior frowned at his words, confused. Elias set his weapon aside and knelt by her, pulling his repair kit from his pack. His hands moved almost without thought, the instinct of a mechanic faced with broken work. He didn't know alien engineering, but he knew enough about energy leaks, stressed plates, and failing cores. Machines spoke a universal language even when their makers did not. The warrior shifted, her breathing quickening. "You tamper with sacred craft," she said, her voice low but strong. Elias gave her a quick glance, meeting those golden eyes. "Yeah, well, it's sacred and it's killing you. Let me work." For a long moment she was silent. Then, against all reason, she leaned back against the rubble, letting her head rest. Her breathing was uneven, but she did not push him away. The armor was unlike anything Elias had touched before. The circuits pulsed as if alive, glowing faintly under his fingers. The outer plating was cracked, but beneath it were layers of strange fiber that felt like both metal and flesh. He worked carefully, using human tools in ways they were never designed for. Sealing a break here, rerouting a spark there, adjusting connectors until the worst of the sparks faded. The warrior's eyes never left him. Her gaze was sharp, studying every movement as if weighing him with each breath. Elias felt the pressure of it, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Minutes stretched like hours. The battlefield around them was still. Yet Elias felt the weight of danger pressing in from all sides. The silence would not last. But for now, his entire world was the failing armor under his hands, and the strange, proud being who trusted him enough not to push him away. When the sparks dimmed and the plates held firm, Elias let out a slow breath. He wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "That should keep you alive a little longer," he said quietly. The alien warrior's lips curved in something that was not quite a smile, but not anger either. Her voice came soft but steady. "Strange human, you risk yourself. For me." Elias looked at her again, really looked. Not as an enemy, not as a monster, but as someone who had bled and broken on the same ground he had. "Guess I've got a habit of fixing things," he said. and though the battlefield remained dangerous, though enemies could return at any moment, a fragile thread of understanding sparked between them in that ruined silence. The night grew colder, though neither of them paid much attention to it. Elias tightened the last strap of her chest armor, testing the hold. The plates no longer sparked with each breath she took, and the faint hum of energy running through the circuits had evened into a steady pulse. It wasn't perfect, but it was stable. For now. The alien warrior's eyes followed his movements with an intensity that made him feel like he was being judged for every touch of his tools. He tried to ignore it, focusing only on the work. His hands shook a little, not from fear but from the pressure of handling technology so advanced he barely understood it. When he finally leaned back and put his tools away, he said quietly, "That should hold. Don't push it too hard, though." Her voice came after a pause, low but clear. "You are skilled for one so young." Elias gave a short laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. Skilled is a polite way of saying reckless. "I've patched up machines all my life, but I've never touched anything like this before. You're lucky it didn't blow up in my face." The alien's lips pressed together in a faint expression, hard to read but not hostile. She tried to shift her weight, testing the armor. The glow in the circuit strengthened briefly before settling. She exhaled and then looked back at him. "I am Kaelin of the Aelith," she said, "Third Blade of the Dusk Legion. Do you know who we are?" Elias nodded slowly. He had heard enough from the war reports. The Aelith were legendary fighters, fierce, disciplined, nearly unbeatable in close combat. Entire squads of humans had fallen to a single warrior like her. His mouth went dry, realizing just how dangerous the wounded figure in front of him really was. "Yeah," he admitted. "I've heard the stories. Doesn't exactly make me feel better about sitting here next to you." Kaelin tilted her head slightly, the golden light of her eyes narrowing. "And yet, you stayed. You chose repair instead of killing me. Why?" Elias looked down at his hands, scarred and calloused from years of engineering work. He didn't have a simple answer. Part of him wanted to say he didn't know. But the truth was he had never been good at walking away from broken things. Machines, people, it didn't matter. Something in him always pushed him to fix what others left behind. Finally he shrugged. "Because you needed help. And I was the one standing here." For the first time, Kaelin leaned closer, studying his face as though she wanted to find some hidden trick in his words. "Human logic," she murmured almost to herself. "Simple, yet confusing." Before Elias could reply, a low hum rippled through the ruins. He froze, instantly recognizing the sound. Drones. Kaelin's hand went to her weapon instinctively, but her strength was still weak. Elias cursed under his breath, grabbing his rifle. The hum grew louder, followed by the metallic click of legs moving across stone. "They will find us," Kaelin said, her voice steady despite her injuries. "They hunt the wounded." Elias's heart pounded. "Then we'd better make sure they regret it." He quickly scanned the area, his eyes landing on a pile of broken power cores nearby. He had seconds to think, maybe less. His hands moved fast, pulling a few spare wires from his kit and rigging them together. He could almost hear his old instructors shouting in his head. "Don't jury-rig alien tech. Don't mix human wires with Aelith circuits," but he had no choice. He shoved the makeshift device against Kaelin's chest plate. The circuits flared and a faint blue shimmer spread around her like a weak shield. Kaelin's eyes widened in surprise. "What did you—" "No time." Elias cut her off. "It'll hold a few shots. After that, you'd better swing that sword of yours." The first drone appeared, crawling over the rubble like a spider made of glass and steel. Its red sensors locked on them immediately. A second and third followed, their wings buzzing as they shifted to attack mode. Elias fired first. His rifle spat bright bursts, knocking one drone off the wall, sparks scattering. Kaelin surged forward, her armor groaning but holding. Her blade hissed through the air, slicing the nearest drone cleanly in half. The battlefield lit with chaos. Elias ducked low, firing bursts to drive the drones into Kaelin's reach. She moved like a storm, slower than she should have been but still deadly, each strike powerful enough to cleave metal like paper. The shield flickered with each impact, and Elias kept shouting warnings, adjusting the connections every time the energy began to fail. "Left," he called. Kaelin turned just in time, her blade shattering another drone into shards. A final one dived for Elias, too fast for him to shoot. He braced himself, but Kaelin was faster. She slammed into it, her armor sparking, and sent it crashing to the ground. When the last drone's light died, Silence returned. Elias sat back against the rubble, breathing hard. His rifle was nearly empty, and his nerves felt like frayed wires. Kaylin stood over the wreckage, her chest heaving. The armor sparked again, weaker this time, but still holding. She looked down at Elias, her expression unreadable. "You fight as if your life means nothing," she said. Elias gave a tired grin. "That's called being human." For a long moment, Kaylin stared at him. Then, slowly, she lowered her blade and nodded once, almost in respect. In that fragile quiet, Elias realized something had shifted between them. He was no longer just a human engineer patching up an enemy. He was something else to her now, an ally, even if only for this night. The ruins smelled of smoke and scorched wires. Shards of the destroyed drones littered the ground like broken glass, their dim lights fading into silence. Elias wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. His chest still rose and fell too quickly from the fight, but he forced himself to stay alert. Quiet never lasted long out here. Kaylin stood nearby, her tall figure steady despite the battle. The faint blue glow of the jury-rigged shield flickered one last time before fading. She looked down at her chest plate as if surprised it was still intact. The golden light in her eyes softened slightly, though her face remained stern. "You touch Aelith armor as if it is your own craft," she said, her voice low but sharp. Elias sat back against the rubble, catching his breath. "Didn't have a choice. It was either fix it or let those things tear us apart. I figured you'd prefer the first option." Kaylin tilted her head, studying him the way one might study a puzzle. "You risked your life for me. I still do not understand." Elias gave a tired smile. "I'm starting to think I don't understand myself either. Maybe I just hate seeing things fall apart." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer before she leaned forward slightly. The motion made her armor creak, the circuits glowing faintly under the stress. "Go on," she said quietly. "Don't stop." Elias blinked. "What?" "Your repairs," she clarified, though her voice carried a weight beyond simple instruction. "You began a task. You will finish it." He let out a slow sigh and pulled his repair kit closer. "Fine, but if this thing explodes, I'm blaming you." She didn't answer, only shifted so he could reach the damage more easily. Elias tried to ignore the intensity of her gaze as he leaned in again, tools in hand. His fingers worked carefully, sealing a crack, smoothing a connection, tightening a plate that threatened to snap. Every time he touched the strange living circuits, they pulsed faintly as if reacting to him. "You know," he said after a while, his voice casual. "Human armor doesn't do this. It doesn't hum, it doesn't glow, and it definitely doesn't look alive." Kaylin's tone was proud when she replied, "Our armor is bonded to us. It grows with us, carries our strength, our history. To allow another to touch it is unthinkable." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you letting me?" Her golden eyes locked onto his. "Because you did not stop when you could have. Because you chose repair over death." He swallowed, unsure how to respond. There was something heavy in her words. Something more than gratitude, though he didn't fully understand it. He focused on his work, though his mind raced. The night stretched on as he continued to repair her chest plate. The silence between them was broken only by the click of tools and the faint hum of the circuits. At times, Kaylin would study him so intently that Elias felt his hands tremble. He had never been so close to someone who had been raised to see humans as little more than reckless enemies. When he finally tightened the last plate into place, he sat back with a groan. "There. That's about as good as it's going to get without a full workshop." Kaylin looked down at the repaired armor, running her hand over the seams as if testing his work. The glow of the circuit steadied, no longer flickering weakly. She gave a slow nod. "You have given my armor new breath. That is not a small thing." Elias shrugged, trying to act casual, though he felt a strange weight in her words. "Like I said, fixing things is what I do. Doesn't matter if it's human tech or alien." Her gaze sharpened. "You are not like the others." Before Elias could ask what she meant, a distant rumble echoed through the ruins. The ground trembled slightly beneath them. Both of them froze, listening. The sound was not drones this time. It was heavier, deeper, like engines moving across stone. "They return," Kaylin whispered. Elias cursed under his breath and reached for his rifle. "Great, and here I was hoping for a quiet night." Kaylin rose slowly, testing her strength. Her armor held together under her movements, the repairs keeping the energy steady. She drew her blade, its edge catching the faint light of the moon. "This time," she said, her voice carrying a fierce edge, "I fight beside you, human." Elias gave her a quick grin despite the tension knotting his chest. Glad to hear it. Just don't expect me to swing a sword like that. The rumble grew louder, closer. Shadows shifted along the far end of the ruins, shapes moving in the darkness. Elias steadied his rifle, his heart pounding. Kaelin stood tall beside him, her presence both intimidating and strangely reassuring. Whatever came out of the darkness, they would face it together, and for the first time, Elias realized he wasn't just fixing a machine, he was building a fragile bond. One spark at a time, the ruins were no longer silent. The low rumble grew louder with every passing second, carrying a vibration that rattled through the broken walls and loose stones. Elias gripped his rifle tighter, his eyes scanning the shifting shadows. He knew that sound, it wasn't drones this time. It was something heavier, built for hunting. Beside him, Kaelin stood tall, her silver-blue armor steady after his repairs. The glow of her circuits pulsed in rhythm with her breathing, as though her strength had returned with the armor's renewed life. She held her long blade in one hand, the steel reflecting faint streaks of moonlight. Her golden eyes narrowed as she listened. "They send scavenger beasts first," she said, her voice calm though her body tensed like a bowstring. "Machines bred to smell blood and weakness." Elias swallowed hard. "Sounds lovely. Guess that means they've already picked up your trail." "Our trail," Kaelin corrected. Elias gave a short laugh despite the knot forming in his chest. "Right. Thanks for the reminder." The rumble split into several distinct noises. Metal claws scraping stone, hydraulic limbs hissing, engines growling low like predators circling their prey. Elias felt the hair on his arms rise. He shifted his position, crouching lower behind a slab of wreckage. Shapes moved in the dark. At first, Elias counted 2, then 4, then 6. The scavenger machines crawled into view. Sleek, canine-shaped constructs with armor plates for skin and burning red lights for eyes. They moved with eerie silence despite their size, their claws slicing into the rubble as they advanced. Kaelin's grip tightened on her blade. "They test us first, then their masters will come." Elias muttered under his breath. "Of course they will." He quickly checked the charge on his rifle. Half a clip left. Not enough for 6 beasts, let alone whatever came after them. His gaze flicked to Kaelin. She was stronger now but still recovering. If she pushed herself too hard, the armor might fail again. "You hold back the ones that get close," he said, trying to sound steady. "I'll try to thin the pack." Kaelin gave him a sharp look as though weighing his words. Then she nodded once. "Agreed." The first scavenger leapt forward, its red eyes burning brighter as it lunged. Elias fired 3 quick bursts, sparks exploding from its chest. The beast slammed into the ground, skidding across the rubble before going still. But the others didn't pause. They fanned out, circling, their movements fast and coordinated. Kaelin moved like a storm. Her blade slashed through the air, cutting one beast cleanly in half as it tried to pounce. Sparks showered across the ground. Another lunged low, aiming for her legs, but she twisted and drove her blade downward, pinning it to the earth. Her repaired armor groaned under the force, but it held. Elias fired again, picking off a 3rd scavenger before it could flank them. He ducked behind cover as 2 more charged, their claws ripping chunks out of the stone. "Little help here," he shouted. Kaelin turned sharply, sprinting faster than Elias thought possible in her condition. Her blade swept in a wide arc, knocking one beast away from him. The second leapt onto the rubble, jaws snapping open, but Elias jammed his rifle against its head and pulled the trigger. The blast sent it tumbling back in a spray of sparks. For a few moments, the ruins lit up with fire and steel. Elias moved with desperate energy, dodging between cover, firing whenever he had a clear shot. Kaelin fought with brutal precision, every strike fueled by years of training. Together, they pushed the scavengers back, one after another, until the last collapsed in a heap of broken metal. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of Elias's heavy breathing. He dropped back against the rubble, his rifle hot in his hands. Kaelin stood tall above the wreckage, her blade dripping with sparks. Her armor flickered but held. She looked down at him, golden eyes glowing softly. "You fight with more than weapons. You fight with instinct." Elias gave her a tired grin. "I fight because if I don't, I die. Pretty simple instinct, if you ask me." Her lips curved ever so slightly, almost like the shadow of a smile. But before Elias could say anything else, another sound reached them, louder, deeper than before. "Not claws this time, engines, heavy engines," Elias cursed. "That was just the warm-up, wasn't it?" Kaelin nodded slowly. The hunters come now. Their leaders do not waste time. He pushed himself up, forcing his legs to steady. His rifle had only a few shots left. His tools were scattered across the ground. His body ached from exhaustion, but he saw the way Kaylin stood, her presence like a mountain despite her wounds, and he felt something shift in his chest. "We're not dead yet," Elias said firmly. Kaylin turned to him, her expression unreadable. Then she gave a single nod. "No, not yet." The engines grew closer, their roar shaking the earth beneath them. The ruins trembled as lights flared in the distance, cutting through the dark. The real fight was coming. Elias and Kaylin stood side by side, human and Aelith ready to face it together. And though fear clawed at him, Elias felt something else too, a spark of defiance. For the first time he believed that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The rumble of engines rolled closer until the ground shook beneath their feet. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle. Though he knew its power was nearly drained, his heart pounded hard in his chest, but he forced himself to stand tall beside Kaylin. The first of the hunters appeared through the smoke. Tall machines shaped like armored soldiers, walking on heavy legs, their arms fitted with bladed weapons and long-range cannons. Their glowing red sensors swept across the ruins like watchful eyes. Behind them, more shadows moved, a full squad advancing with mechanical precision. Elias muttered, "Well, this just keeps getting better." Kaylin raised her blade, her posture proud and unyielding. "Then we cut them down." The hunters moved fast for their size, spreading out to trap them. The first cannon fired, blasting a chunk of stone from the wall where Elias had been standing seconds before. He threw himself behind cover, dust filling his lungs. Kaylin charged straight into the fray. Her blade flashed silver blue in the dark, striking the nearest hunter across its chest. Sparks exploded as the machine staggered, but it didn't fall. It swung back with a heavy strike, slamming into her shield. The repaired armor groaned, glowing under the force, but held steady. Elias peeked out, firing a quick burst at another hunter's legs. The shots left scorch marks but didn't slow it much. "Of course," he muttered, "why would anything be easy?" Kaylin fought with strength that seemed impossible for someone who had been nearly broken hours before. Every swing of her weapon sent echoes through the ruins. Yet Elias could see the strain. Her movements slower than they should be, her breathing sharp between strikes. She was holding the line, but not for long. Thinking fast, Elias ducked down and scanned the rubble. Broken cores, shattered drone parts, exposed wiring. They weren't useless. Not if he got creative. He grabbed a handful of pieces, quickly twisting wires together. His mind worked at lightning speed, piecing together something that might explode if he was lucky. "Kaylin!" he shouted. She parried a hunter's blade with a roar, turning her head just enough to meet his eyes. "Pull them closer," Elias yelled. Without hesitation, she shifted her stance. Instead of driving them back, she drew the hunters toward the pile of wreckage where Elias crouched. The machines followed, relentless and confident in their numbers. Elias finished his work, a small device glowing unsteadily in his hands. It wasn't a bomb exactly, more like an unstable charge, but it would do. He set it against the ground and waited until the nearest hunter stepped close. "Come on," he whispered. The moment its foot slammed down near the charge, Elias triggered it. A burst of blue-white energy erupted, blasting upward. The hunter's armor split open in a shower of sparks, and it collapsed in a smoking heap. The blast shook the others back for a moment. Kaylin took advantage. With a fierce cry, she swung her blade in a wide arc, striking through the staggered machines. One fell, then another, but more pressed forward. The hunters regrouped, firing their cannons into the ruins. Stone shattered, flames erupted, and the night filled with chaos. Elias scrambled between cover, firing whenever he had a clear shot. His rifle beeped in warning, low power. He ignored it and kept shooting. One hunter broke away from the group, heading straight for him. Elias cursed and ducked, firing until the weapon clicked empty. The machine raised its bladed arm high, ready to strike. Elias braced himself, but before the blade could fall, Kaylin crashed into it, her sword driving deep into its chest. The hunter sparked violently before toppling over, lifeless. She pulled her blade free and looked down at him. "Stay alive, human," she growled. "Doing my best," Elias panted, scrambling back to his feet. Together they stood their ground. Elias used every scrap of his engineering skill, rigging small traps from broken parts, creating bursts of energy to slow the hunters down. Kaylin moved with deadly focus, her strikes precise even as exhaustion weighed on her. The battle stretched on, every second a struggle. But slowly, one by one, the hunters fell. Smoke thickened around them, glowing with sparks and fire. Elias could barely hear over the ringing in his ears, his muscles aching from the strain. Still, he didn't stop. Neither of them did. Finally, the last hunter collapsed, its red sensors flickering out as it hit the ground with a heavy crash. Silence fell once more, broken only by the crackle of flames and their ragged breathing. Elias dropped onto a broken slab, his rifle useless now, little more than dead weight. He laughed breathlessly, shaking his head. "I can't believe we survived that." Kaylin stood among the wreckage, her armor blackened but intact. Her chest rose and fell slowly, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the smoke. She looked at him, her voice steady, though softer than before. "You fought well, Elias Var, reckless but well." He smirked tiredly. "That's the highest praise I'll ever get from you, isn't it?" For a moment, the corners of her lips almost curved into a smile. She lowered her blade and stepped closer, her towering figure casting a long shadow across him. "You are more than I expected from a human." Elias leaned back, staring up at the smoky sky. "Funny, I was thinking the same about you." And though the ruins still burned around them, though danger still lurked beyond the horizon, they had stood together and survived what should have been impossible. For the first time, Elias felt not just fear in Kaylin's presence, but trust. The ruins were silent again, but it was not the silence of peace. Smoke curled from the shattered machines, their red sensors fading into dark glass. The ground was littered with scorched metal, broken stone, and the smell of fire. Elias sat on a slab of concrete, trying to catch his breath, while Kaylin stood tall among the wreckage, her armor scarred but still shining faintly in the firelight. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Their fight had been hard, and the weight of it still pressed on them. Elias's hands shook as he set his useless rifle aside, his body aching in places he hadn't even realized during the chaos. His mind kept replaying the battle, Kaylin's blade flashing, the machines closing in, the charge exploding in blue fire. It felt like a dream that he had survived it all. Kaylin finally broke the silence. Her voice was low, but it carried a weight that filled the air. Those hunters, they were not here by chance. Someone sent them. Someone does not want either of us to leave these ruins alive. Elias nodded slowly. "Figures. Guess we're making the wrong kind of friends." Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark as she looked down at him. "No, the kind of enemies who fear what we might do together." That thought made Elias straighten. He had been thinking of himself as a survivor, someone just trying to stay alive in a war that was far beyond him. But Kaylin's words suggested something more. If the hunters were sent here, it meant his survival mattered to someone or threatened someone. Kaylin moved closer, lowering her weapon. She crouched down so her golden eyes were level with his. Her presence was overwhelming, but this time it did not make him flinch. Instead, he met her gaze, waiting for what she would say. "You repaired my armor," she said. "You fought beside me when even your own weapons were failing. You stood when others would have fled. You are not like the humans I have known before." Elias blinked, unsure how to respond. Compliments were rare from her, and this sounded like more than that. "I just did what I could," he muttered. Kaylin shook her head. "No, you did what was needed, and for that, I owe you more than words." She placed her hand over the glowing core of her chest armor, where his repairs still held the broken plates together. "Among my kind there is a bond forged in battle, a warrior's oath. It is sworn only when two have faced death together and stood unbroken." Elias felt his throat tighten. "And you're saying?" Her hand extended toward him, palm open, fingers scarred but steady. "I swear it to you, human. From this moment my blade is yours and your fight is mine. Until the stars fall and the blood of enemies cools, I will not abandon you." The words hit him like a shockwave. Elias stared at her hand, stunned. He wasn't sure what this oath meant in detail, but he could feel its power. To her people, this wasn't casual. It wasn't even just friendship. It was a vow that bound lives together. He laughed softly, though it was nervous, not mocking. "You're serious?" Kaylin's expression didn't change. "I do not speak oaths lightly." Elias hesitated only a moment longer before taking her hand. Her grip closed around his, firm and unshakable, and a strange warmth spread up his arm. He couldn't explain it, but he felt stronger, steadier, as if her strength was being shared with him. "All right, then," he said quietly, Guess that makes us partners. For the first time since he had met her, Kaylin's stern features softened. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. She released his hand and rose to her full height again, standing like a shadow against the burning ruins. The moment of peace didn't last. In the distance, Elias heard a low rumble. Not machines this time, but something heavier, like the echo of engines across the wasteland. He frowned and turned his head, trying to see through the smoke. "We've got company again," he said. Kaylin's gaze sharpened, her body tense. Not hunters. Something larger. The sound grew clearer, the steady thrum of a dropship cutting through the night sky. A spotlight pierced the smoke, sweeping across the ruins. Elias ducked behind a broken wall, cursing under his breath. Great, just what we needed. But Kaylin did not move to hide. She stood tall, watching the dropship descend. Her blade remained ready, but her voice was calm. "Do not fear. With your hands, you brought my armor back to life. With your courage, you faced death beside me. Now with this oath between us, there is nothing that can break us." Elias looked at her, half wanting to believe, half still caught in his own doubts. Yet deep down he felt something shift inside him. She wasn't just saying words, she believed them. And if she could believe in him, maybe he could start to believe in himself. The dropship's doors opened, dark figures stepping out onto the scorched ground. Elias gripped his empty rifle out of habit. Though it was useless now, he glanced at Kaylin. "What now?" he asked. Her golden eyes gleamed with firelight. "Now," she said, raising her blade, "we show them what it means when a human and a warrior fight as one." Elias exhaled slowly, his fear melting into a strange, reckless courage. Whatever came out of that dropship, they would face it together. The oath had been sworn, and there was no turning back. The dropship hovered above the ruins like a dark shadow, its engines roaring, sending waves of dust and ash across the broken ground. Elias shielded his eyes, his heart pounding. From the open bay door, armored figures leapt down, landing heavily in the rubble. They were not hunters, not machines. They were soldiers, tall and heavily armed, moving with trained precision. Their armor was dark steel, marked with a sigil Elias didn't recognize, but the sight alone told him they were dangerous. Kaylin stood her ground, blade raised, her golden eyes fixed on the newcomers. Her armor, though scarred, gleamed faintly in the light of the flames. Elias stood beside her, his rifle dead but still in his hands because he refused to stand empty. The leader of the soldiers stepped forward, his helmet reflecting the firelight. His voice rang out, harsh and metallic through his mask. "Kaylin of the Fallen Legion, you should not have survived. And yet here you are, standing beside a human." Elias stiffened, but Kaylin did not move. Her voice was cold, carrying the weight of command. "You know what we faced here. Send more hunters, send soldiers, it will not matter. We are not broken." The leader tilted his head, studying her. "You took an oath with him, didn't you?" His voice sharpened, almost amused. "A warrior's bond with a human. How far you have fallen." Kaylin did not flinch. "I have not fallen. I have risen." She lowered her blade slightly, pointing it toward the soldiers. "And he rises with me." Elias swallowed hard, but the words filled him with a fire he hadn't known before. The oath wasn't just Kaylin's promise, it was theirs. The soldiers spread out, weapons glowing with power, ready to strike. The leader raised his arm. "Kill them both!" The ground erupted in chaos. Blasts of energy tore through the ruins, shaking stone and throwing sparks into the smoke. Elias dove behind cover, firing his useless rifle out of reflex before realizing it was dead weight. He cursed, tossing it aside, and grabbed a shard of broken metal instead. Kaylin charged into the soldiers with a roar. Her blade blazed, cutting through armor with brutal precision. Every strike was fueled by strength and something more: purpose. She was not fighting only for herself anymore. She was fighting for both of them. Elias used his wits. He darted through the rubble, snatching broken cores and shattered parts from the fallen hunters. His hands worked furiously, twisting wires, forcing sparks, creating small traps. He planted one near a wall and shouted, "Kaylin, push them here." She obeyed without hesitation, striking hard to drive two soldiers toward the crumbling wall. Elias triggered his makeshift charge, and the explosion collapsed the stone onto them, burying them in fire and dust. The fight raged on. Kaylin moved like a storm, her armor glowing brighter as if fueled by her vow. Elias fought with every scrap of cleverness he had, setting traps, throwing debris, and striking when enemies underestimated him. Together they held their ground, step by step, blow by blow, but the soldiers kept coming. For every one that fell, another pushed forward. The leader advanced at last, his blade twice the size of Kalen's, his strength far greater. When their swords clashed, the sound shook the ruins. Sparks lit the night as steel met steel, neither giving way. Elias saw Kalen falter for a moment, her exhaustion finally showing. Without thinking, he ran to her side, grabbing another scrap of tech. He jammed it into the leader's armor, forcing a surge of unstable energy. The soldier roared as his armor sparked violently, giving Kalen the opening she needed. With a cry that echoed across the battlefield, she struck, her blade driving deep into the leader's chest. The great soldier staggered, dropped his weapon, and fell heavily to the ground. The remaining soldiers froze. Their leader lay defeated, his armor flickering with dying energy. One by one they began to retreat, dragging their wounded back toward the dropship. Engines roared again, and within moments the ship lifted off, vanishing into the smoky night sky. Silence returned. This time it was the silence of victory. Elias collapsed onto the rubble, breathing hard, his body aching, his hands raw from work and blood. He looked up at Kalen, who stood tall, her blade lowered at last. Her golden eyes glowed softly, not with rage but with something steadier. He laughed weakly. "Remind me never to make you angry." Kalen turned, and for the first time she smiled, small but real. She walked to him, extending her hand. He took it, and she pulled him to his feet with surprising gentleness. "You fought with the heart of a warrior," she said. "Your hands shaped victory as much as my blade." The oath was not wasted. Elias met her gaze, tired but steady. "Guess that means we keep going, huh?" She nodded. "The war is not over, but together we will not fall." They stood side by side, looking out across the ruins. The night was broken, the land scarred, but something stronger had been forged there. Not just survival, not just alliance, but trust. An oath that bound them beyond the battlefield. Elias felt it deep in his bones. The universe was vast, full of enemies, but also full of possibility. For the first time, he wasn't afraid. With Kalen at his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Above them, the stars shone faintly through the smoke, silent witnesses to their vow. And beneath those stars, a human and a warrior walked forward, not broken, not alone, but bound together by fire, steel, and unshakable resolve.